On Wednesdays, we usually would talk about upsets, but this Week 5 slate has more depth than the Pacific Ocean, so we got more game picks for you. We got A&M and Arkansas in Jerry World. Y'all, I've been to that stadium, and when they talk about it like it's a spaceship, it's because it legitimately is a spaceship. When you walk into that stadium, will be the stage for that game. The Deep South's oldest rivalry, Georgia and Auburn. Carson Beck, his first road test now in the SEC. What's that going to look like? How is he going to respond when Jordan Hare is just absolutely going crazy at 3:30 Eastern on CBS with that nice little theme we got going for the SEC on CBS? Also for Hugh Freeze, his first, I guess, or not first, but his real first home spot against an SEC opponent where there's going to be some bright lights. Like this game, can you imagine if Hugh Freeze beats Georgia, what that would do for the trajectory of that team? And for that whole Hugh Freeze era at Auburn? We'll talk about that one. We'll give you our pick. We'll break it down. And then the game of the week. College Game Day is going to Durham, North Carolina for Notre Dame at Duke. So Notre Dame now, 2 different weeks. They have College Game Day, but first College Game Day was obviously in South Bend, and now they're going to Durham, North Carolina. So 2 big spots for Notre Dame. And I promise you, when they opened the season and they looked at the schedule, I don't think the game at Duke was circled in the fashion that it was probably circled going into this week. But we got a lot to break down. It is Wednesday, September 27th, 2023, the last one in history. You know what we say around here, we're going to make it a good one. You only get so many fall Saturdays. Only so many. You only get 12 for your team. You got to make them count. So my advice would be, let's cherish it. Let's not wish it away to week 6 or week 7. If your team's on a bye week for Florida State, that's great. Enjoy the Sony Stadium, kick them up, enjoy watching all the games. But I want to make sure we really relish every single moment we get this beautiful sport, because it will not be that long until we are back on Twitter talking about 100 some odd days till college football season. Don't worry about when that's going to be here. Worry about this Saturday. Enjoy this and enjoy today. Have a tremendous opportunity on this, I guess, Prediction Wednesday now to soak up everything that college football has to offer. You got a lot on your plate, whether you're filling out expense reports, whether you're babysitting the kids, whether you're listening to this on podcast while you're working out. Whatever you got on your plate, we appreciate you making us a part of it, and we appreciate y'all being a part of this college football community. This is The Hard Count. I'm JD Pickell. It's college football every single day, live Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern. And y'all are the most important part of this whole operation, so we appreciate you being a part of it. All right? So can't waste too much more time. Before we get to all those predictions, we got to talk about the top 10 teams in the country as we see it. The Nothing But Ball poll after week 4. Rounding into shape. And if you follow me on Instagram and on Twitter, you've already seen my top 10 rankings as it pertains to this week. But even so, I want to make sure we kind of set the table, because I understand a lot of y'all just found this show for college football season. So welcome. It's ball and only ball. And that's how we rank these top 10 teams. So you're going to hear a lot of people talk about resumes and different statistics that are baked into why they think these teams are top 10 in the country. And I'm not saying we don't factor that in. We absolutely do. But at the end of the day, we're thinking about this from a football point of view. We're not thinking about this from a computer's point of view or from a, rankings point of view for what the AP thinks or what the coaches poll thinks. We appreciate those polls, but this poll is protected from those polls, if you catch my drift. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. At number 10, you got Utah. And poor little old Utah, no one's really talking about them. All they did was beat Florida week 1, and they just beat a ranked team this past weekend against UCLA. They got Oregon State this Friday. Cam Rising now. We are all on Cam Rising watch. We've been on Cam Rising watch for the past couple of weeks, but it's starting to feel a little bit more serious as to he could be the starting quarterback relatively soon for Utah, if not this week. Whenever they get Cam Rising back, Utah is going to be extremely dangerous. I was doing radio the other day in Utah, or with a station in Utah. I was physically in Nashville, but was talking to Bill Riley, who does a great job over there, and we sort of aligned on this thought that Utah is this team that you just don't want to play in November. You'll let the other teams in the Pac-12 get the shine right now. USC, Oregon, Washington, they're being talked about, and deservedly so. But when it comes time for that Pac-12 title race to really take shape, I think Utah, once again, will be a factor, and I think they're fine flying under the radar right now. I think they're just fine having everybody else get the headlines and Utah just sort of chopping away at their schedule, and when it comes time for that Pac-12 title game to be played, I think they'll be a factor, or at least in that conversation for who ends up playing in that game. So Utah for us at number 10 this week. At number 9, we got Washington. And I wish I could just talk about how elite I think Washington is, because I think they're absolutely elite. Like I just said, their offense is the best in the country. They're scoring almost 50 points a game, 49.8, almost 600 yards of total offense a game. That's absolutely stupid. Michael Penix Jr., if they gave out the Heisman tomorrow, he would probably be at least in New York City, if not winning the thing. Like the receiving corps has more weapons than the military. Like they are so stacked on every single asset of that offense, especially in the pass game. And the reason why I say I wish I could just talk about how elite they are, the pushback we're going to get is, well, why don't you have Washington higher? They've been so dominant. They've scored so many points. JD, are you hating on Washington? No, I'm not hating on Washington. I love Washington. Pretty much I guess not unknown fact, but a fun fact, I was born in the state of Washington. I was born in Issaquah. I love Washington. But for me, my concern around Washington is, do they have more styles they can fight? I love that you can throw the football. I love that you can score so many points a game. But what happens when you play a team that puts a lid on that pass game and forces you to play ugly? Can you win ugly? Your defense is left a little bit for me to be desired. They're allowing right around 4 yards a carry against pretty mediocre competition. So I love Washington. I don't think that they're a team that we're not going to talk about when it comes to this Pac-12 title conversation, but I'm just a little bit more wait-and-see mode in Washington. That's great. They're dominant. I'm all about that. I'll take it and I'll roll with it and I'll put them in my top 10. But I'm not necessarily buying them as like a top 5 team just yet, in my opinion, from what I can see. Now at number 8, got Oregon. And Oregon, to me, made a statement this past weekend against Colorado. As Dan Lanning would say, talked with their pads a little bit, and you love that if you're an Oregon fan. They're a very physical operation, paired with Bo Nix, who's also in that Heisman conversation when it comes to what he's done at the quarterback position. And for me, what I said about Washington, I feel the opposite way about Oregon. I think they can win multiple ways. I think if you force them to just play ground and pound, they can do that. They're rushing for right around 193 yards a game. If you make them throw the football, Bo Nix, Troy Franklin, they got guys that can separate it and they can win that way as well. So for them, October 14th will be absolutely huge as they play Washington. We will learn a lot about them then. But for right now, based on what I've seen and the styles they can play, I like the Ducks and Dan Lanning at number 8 in our Nothing But Ball poll. At number 7, you got USC. I was tempted to drop USC past number 7. I dropped them from 4 all the way to 7, and I almost put them at 8 because I thought Oregon was so impressive. USC, I'm worried about the defense, as is everybody else in the country. But I was sort of on the front end saying, hey, USC's defense, give it some time. Doesn't need to be in its final form just yet. Watch them trend upward. And we were saying this after the San Jose State game. After San Jose State, a lot of people were like, hey, same old USC defense. We didn't jump in on that. But the thing that's concerning me now is it's been a few weeks now if you're USC, and I'm not seeing the upward trend just yet. There's been some good things, don't get it twisted, but I saw them get schemed up a bit against Arizona State, saw them get taken by surprise and had to make some in-game adjustments to end up winning that football game defensively. But I think as a whole, if you're USC, your hope still lies in what Caleb Williams does for you at quarterback. That offense is still going to score a ton of points. Caleb Williams is still the best player in college football. So for the defense, can we get to serviceable? I'm not saying need to be elite. Can we get to serviceable? Needs to be the case really this weekend against Colorado because they have some weapons that can hurt you. Xavier Weaver, not Xavier Worthy, being one of them. And we're going to learn a lot about USC this week when they go to Boulder. But for us, number 7 this week in our top 10. At number 6, we got Penn State. They absolutely throttled Iowa. Offense gets a lot of headlines. Deservedly so. Drew Aller, he's a dude. Haven't seen him look anything like a first-year starting quarterback just yet. We're going to learn a lot about them a little bit later in the season, especially late October when they go to Columbus, Ohio and play the Buckeyes. We'll find out about them. But for me, man, we talked a lot about Drew Aller and the way that he changes the view on Penn State and how they can probably play a little bit more of a track meet style of football if they need to. And I think that's still true. But for me, the more I've watched this Penn State football team, My hope against Michigan and Ohio State, which is still the goal at Penn State to beat those teams, lies with the defense. Y'all, this is a defense that's giving up single-digit points a game. This is a defense that I think is top 10, maybe top 5 in the country. And so looking at Ohio State, looking at Michigan, yes, the offense should do a little bit more for you in those games with Drew Aller now playing quarterback and that backfield being mature and the offensive line, what you have up front there. But I think the defense, man, the depth and the talent James Franklin told us about in the preseason is showing itself, and I think that's really what would excite me the most in those games against Ohio State and against Michigan a little bit later in the year. So they keep on handling business. They will keep on rising, but for us this week, they're at number 6 in the Nothing But Ball poll. At number 5, Texas Longhorns. And I love this spot if I'm a Texas fan because I'm gonna get to learn a lot about my football team this week. You play Kansas at home, a ranked Kansas team with a good quarterback in Jalen Daniels. And if you don't bring your A game, if you want to look ahead to that Oklahoma game next week in Red River, like, you'll get beat. We're not predicting it. We're actually going to predict that game on tomorrow's show. So if you're watching this Thursday, 11 a.m. Eastern, we're predicting this show. We're predicting that game on this show, rather, so tune in. Tremendous opportunity for us to learn more about their culture. We talk about it a lot. Culture, culture, culture. It's been the thing people talk about that Texas didn't have the last couple of years. I think it's what they do have this year. This will be a great stress test for them to take Kansas seriously, play their best game against Kansas, and then to look forward against Oklahoma and handle business when that game gets there. So for us, Texas at number 5 this week. At number 4, the Ohio State Buckeyes, man. Huge win against Notre Dame on the road. Last play, gritty performance from them. Only scored 17 points. If you told me going into the week, Ohio State, they're going to score 17 against Notre Dame, I'd say, well, how much did they lose by? Wasn't the case. Found a way to get it done on really the last play of the game. And this is a team that I think very obviously has a new edge to them. Ryan Day, what he said post-game, like that's not vintage Ryan Day. We don't see Ryan Day show that kind of emotion, that kind of fire. And to me, I saw a Ryan Day who's just fed up with all the conversation around his football team. I think what Lou Holtz said was just the straw that broke the camel's back because that'd been bubbling up for a while, I would have to imagine, internally at Ohio State. Made a statement, beat a really good physical football team against Notre Dame. And Kyle McCord, the last drive by him, you would have to imagine, is just going to propel his confidence. And I'm curious to see if we don't see a different Kyle McCord now going down the stretch here for Ohio State. Because it's one thing to do it in practice. It's one thing to do it against Indiana. But to do it when the chips are stacked, 2-minute drill to win the game on the road. Really good football team against Notre Dame. Like, that was, I think, the moment for Kyle McCord where you can look in the mirror and say, okay, everything I thought about myself, everything positive that I assumed I could do, I proved it. Not just to everyone else, but to myself and to my teammates. So for Kyle McCord, I think the best football for him is ahead of him. And I think we look back at that game against Notre Dame and that drive against Notre Dame and say that was the turning point for number 6. That was the moment where he arrived and where this Ohio State offense kind of took off. So Ohio State at number 4 for us this week. At number 3, you got Michigan. Michigan is down a spot. Do not panic if you're a Michigan fan, because the reality is, for all these teams, if you keep winning football games, you're going to be right in the mix when it's time for the college football playoff. We know Michigan's season comes down to the game against Ohio State, the game against Penn State. Like, that's a known thing. Michigan's curious to me in this spot because I think they're the team that we know both the most about and the least about. I say we know the most about them because we know this roster. Top 5 returning production. We say it pretty much every week because it's really the only thing we can point to that we know about Michigan. J.J. McCarthy, we know if he gets cooking, this offense is going to have a ton of options for him to throw the football to with Colston Loveland, Roman Wilson. He's been playing great, and the backfield is a known commodity. So if they're able to be multiple offensively, they're going to be really, really good. Again, that's all in theory. On paper, that's what we know. What we don't know is what we don't know because of what we've seen from them against pretty subpar competition. Like, they've looked how they've pretty much been supposed to look, with the exception of a couple of J.J. McCarthy interceptions. But, like, you tell me what we're supposed to take away from this. ECU, UNLV, Bowling Green, Rutgers. They're 4-0. They should be 4-0. They got Jim Harbaugh back now. I think that provides an edge for them and provides a little bit extra us against the world kind of feel for them. But we still just don't know a ton about them in practice. Now, I don't have any concerns about them. They're still a top 4 team for me, a top 3 team for me. But I'm excited to watch what they do in the back half of the schedule against more formidable competition, especially in the Big Ten. Now at number 2, meteoric riser for us, Florida State. And we got to see Florida State in person in Death Valley. And I didn't really get to talk to y'all a ton about this because we just got right into predictions. But our experience in Death Valley was unreal. I can say with confidence that was as loud a sporting environment I've ever been in. Like the student section at Clemson was 1,000,000% engaged, and they had a lot of reason to be engaged by the way that Clemson played in that football game. But we're talking about Florida State, and Florida State did not play their best football game that day and still found a way to win, still found a way to snatch the crown from the ACC champs. I think Jordan Travis is one of the best quarterbacks in America that probably still doesn't get talked about enough. I think Keon Coleman is the best wide receiver in the country, not named Marvin Harrison Jr., and I think what Mike Norvell has done there to this point deserves all the praise and all the credit in the world. The resume, again, this is not a resume rankings, but when you look at the resume for Florida State, just in a vacuum of this season, I think it's hard to put them anywhere outside the top 3 in my mind. And I have them at 2 with wins against LSU convincingly and against Clemson on not their best day, on the road, noon kick. Quarterback's dinged up, found a way to get it done. So Florida State for us is number 2 in the Nothing But Ball poll this week. At number 1, no surprise here, Dogs still on top, man. We're going to learn a lot this week against Auburn. We talked about what it means for Hugh Freeze and the spot for him with this being a massive game for them at home. But for Georgia now, Carson Beck's first real road test. What do we learn about him? How does he handle that spot? Because the knock on the Georgia offense, if you have one to this point, is, well, hey, Carson Beck's got to cut it loose a little more. They got to push the ball downfield a little more. And I think that's fair, but it's one thing to say that against South Carolina at home. That's not a knock on South Carolina. We saw they have their own issues in the back end from that Mississippi State game. But to do it on the road in a raucous environment, I promise you, Jordan Hare will be going crazy. How does he look? How does he handle that? That should tell us a lot about not this team as a whole. We're not going to find them from the Auburn game, but I think we do learn a lot about them and the direction and the progress of this Georgia team so far. But again, there's no reason for me to knock them down from what we've seen so far this year. And I couldn't in good conscience move Georgia down from number 1. So Georgia's still number 1. So to recap it for you, in our Nothing But Ball poll, heading into week 5 of the college football season, we have Utah at 10, Washington at 9, Oregon at 8, USC at 7. So a loaded, you got 4 teams from the Pac-12 in our top 10. You got Penn State at 6, Texas at 5, Ohio State moving up to 4 after a big road win against Notre Dame, Michigan at 3, Florida State at 2, and the Dogs still at number 1 in the Nothing But Ball poll. Get at me on here on Twitter, on Instagram, and let me know who's in your top 10. What would you change? I know a lot of y'all feel strongly about Washington. I told you my take on them, but I want to hear from y'all because, again, y'all are the most important part of this show. So get at me on the socials, get at me in the live chat, get at me in the comment section. Let me know your top 10. We appreciate y'all in advance for that. All right, now, if you could like the video, we've got a nice little streak of, I think we're somewhere around 24, 25 shows in a row with over 100 likes before we get off the air. If you could like this video, little thumbs up icon under the picture, we'll be well over that, and we would appreciate y'all immensely for that. All right, let's keep on rolling now. It's prediction time. It is a prediction Wednesday. We don't get a ton of these, so we got to make them count. First game I want to talk about. Texas A&M, 6.5-point favorites against Arkansas in Jerry World. I've been in this stadium a couple of times. It is unlike any other sporting stadium I've ever been in. I mean, I've been in Staples Center, been in the Rose Bowl. I'm not saying that Jerry World is better. I'm just saying it's unlike anything else, and this will be the stage for this one, the Southwest Classic, 12 Eastern, SEC Network. For A&M now, there's already been some volume around Jimbo Fisher and what he's been after that Miami game. There was a fair amount of chatter. We talked about that game against Auburn, that the stakes were enormously high last week. If they had dropped that game, there would have been some unhappy campers in College Station. Even so, they got it done. A loss, I think, in this spot, in the same way, would still be brutal because you won this game a season ago. You won this game last year. If you were to lose this game in the same spot against an Arkansas team that I don't think is as good as they were last year, I mean, just think about the optics of that. It would feel like a step backwards. Whether it is or not, regardless of how this game plays out, regardless of who you have playing quarterback, it would feel like a step backwards, and you can't have steps backwards with where Jimbo Fisher is right now as the head coach at A&M and how well they've recruited. So, going back to the quarterback position, Conner Weigman got dinged up against Auburn. For the sake of this conversation, I'm going to err on the side that it's going to be Max Johnson. Jimbo Fisher said Conner Weigman's day-to-day. Conner Weigman could very well play in this game, but again, for the sake of this prediction, I'm going to go ahead and say it's Max Johnson. So we're going to proceed forward with that. For Arkansas, this could revitalize their season. They've been close but no cigar the last 2 tries. They had LSU on the ropes, lost by a field goal, lost to BYU. Even though the offense has scored 31 in both those spots, the defense has had some issues. Now we got to figure it out if we're Arkansas. But a win like this, in a spot like this, against a team that you lost to last year, this would kind of revitalize the Sam Pittman momentum and get them back on track. So a big spot for Arkansas. Question in this game. Texas A&M's weapons against the Arkansas secondary. We've talked so much about who A&M has at the wide receiver position. Evan Stewart made a big-time touchdown catch against Auburn last week. There is no shortage of guys to throw the football to. And I think that's going to be an enormous asset for Max Johnson should he end up being the guy. Again, we're operating under that pretense. Arkansas has shown they have issues defending the pass. They picked off Jaden Daniels one time last week, but even so, Jaden Daniels was a guy that we were talking about going into the season of man, can he push the ball vertical? Are they able to do that? And he went nuts last week against this Arkansas defense. So there's going to be plays to be made is what I want to make sure we say. Is that the difference maker for A&M? I think it very well could be. Now, the thing for Arkansas, I don't think that you need to just win that matchup straight up in the back end. I don't think it's realistic to say Arkansas secondary versus A&M's wide receivers. Arkansas, can you win that matchup? I don't think that's how you go about it if you're Arkansas. I think for Arkansas, you need to find a way to change that matchup. And the way that you change that matchup is you get to the quarterback. Arkansas now, very quietly, the best sack rate in the country at 14%. That means that 14% of the time, Arkansas is getting to the quarterback. That is ridiculous. Again, that's best in the country. So what that changes is if you're in the secondary for Arkansas, we don't need to be playing phenomenal for 4 seconds. The hope is we're back there for 2.5 seconds trying to hold it down versus our man or whatever zone we're in. And by that point in time, our front 7, our rush has gotten to Max Johnson or Conner Weigman and made him uncomfortable and forced him to throw off platform or forced him to make a bad decision, whatever it ends up being, but that would be the equalizer for you. So the responsibility then falls on that Texas A&M offensive line. Can we hold it down for Max Johnson in this spot and allow him to get comfortable and deliver the football to our playmakers? Because I think the A&M playmakers are going to win that matchup. I feel pretty confident saying that based on what Arkansas has shown. Do they have the time to get rid of the football, and do they have the time to deliver it to those playmakers and give them time to win? That's going to be crucial. Other part of this, how does Texas A&M handle the run game with KJ Jefferson? We talk about mobile quarterbacks on here a lot. KJ Jefferson is a different kind of mobile quarterback. That is a big human being coming downhill at you. I don't think he's looking to slide all that often. He's running with his shoulder pads, and he uses every square inch of those shoulder pads when you try and tackle him. So the quarterback run game, at worst, is a game plan breaker. The thing about a mobile quarterback, you may have the exact right coverage drawn up, exact right blitz drawn up. But if the mobile quarterback is able to just break contain or maybe makes you miss on that blitz or whatever it ends up being, if he tucks it and runs, new play. Or he gets out of the pocket, looks downfield, new play. How does A&M deal with that? KJ Jefferson last year ran for over 100 yards in this game. So DJ Durkin and company, they got to figure it out now. At best, for A&M, it's just annoying to scheme for. It's annoying to have to take another period during your practice away from something else you could be doing defensively, and you got to focus on here's how we fit quarterback power. Here's how we fit the zone read. Here's how we're going to fit it when he breaks out of contain, and we got to make sure we plaster to wide receivers. Just another thing to work on, another thing you got to focus on if you're A&M defensively, and it could be a very big asset for Arkansas because I don't know that they have the playmakers they had a season ago. In fact, I do know they don't have the playmakers they had a season ago if you're Arkansas. But for KJ Jefferson, if he gets rolling a little bit now, does a couple of things. Controls the game more for Arkansas. They're able to kind of play a little bit more Well, yeah, I mean, game control. They control the tempo of the game, and they kind of take their out of the football a little bit more and extend some drives with KJ Jefferson, whether it's a quarterback design run or whether he tucks it and runs and picks up a 3rd and 7 with his legs. Also, more of the passing game is going to open up just by nature of the discipline you have to have defensively. Either you have to commit more guys to try and stop KJ Jefferson in the run game because you're short a man, because in the quarterback run game, design quarterback run game, you have 10 guys blocking for 1. And if it's a running back run, it's typically 9 guys blocking for 1. So in that way, you're short a number is what I'm trying to tell you if you're A&M defensively in design quarterback runs. So you can kind of mess with that safety, and you can maybe have some more things open up in the run game if you do get going. Also, you got to be disciplined if he breaks contain. Like, we can't have a situation where exactly what LSU had. You had guys losing track of receivers when KJ Jefferson rolls out on a broken play, and wouldn't you know it, big touchdown pass for Arkansas that reignites their chances in that football game against LSU. Can't be the situation for A&M. Got to be disciplined. When he breaks contain, we got to plaster wide receivers. We got to make sure the guy that's spying KJ Jefferson is doing just that and staying disciplined. We can't have a big discombobulation fest if we're A&M's defense, all right? So that's crucial. Maybe the most important thing, though, if KJ Jefferson gets rolling with his legs against A&M, you know what that does from a confidence standpoint for KJ Jefferson? You know how much you just start to feel like, okay, hey, they can't stop me in the run game. You kind of feel like that if you're a good shooter in basketball, that basket starts to look a little bit wider. Feel like you have a little bit more margin for error. Maybe you start uncorking a few more down the field. And a guy to watch for if they do get rolling in the quarterback run game, Andrew Armstrong. Big body wide receiver. Played well against LSU. Had a touchdown catch called back, actually, against LSU. He is a one-on-one mismatch. If there's no safety help, because you got to fill for KJ Jefferson, there's going to be good things happening for Arkansas in the pass game, and likely because Andrew Armstrong is making plays. We've seen this A&M secondary have issues against Miami. Got to be locked down on the back end and got to be disciplined in the quarterback run game. So for A&M now, going back to their side of the football, I think it's going to be really important what they do early in the run game. And when I say that, again, this is the assumption that Max Johnson's probably playing quarterback, but also going back to the point that Bobby Petrino, everything he does is a game with the safeties. This power spread scheme. They're going to do a lot of pulling guard. They're going to make it look like it's power run pretty frequently, even when it's not. But early in the game, expect them to try and get downhill and establish the run against Arkansas. How does Arkansas play that? Just like what we said against KJ Jefferson in their run game. What do the safeties have to do? Do the safeties have to start triggering quickly on the run? Do they have to go help out against that power run scheme? Because if they do, and that starts to become a routine thing for them in the 3rd and 4th quarter, don't be surprised if we see A&M, little play action, Evan Stewart down the field, touchdown A&M, good things are happening for the Aggies. That would not be a world you want to live in. Now, Arkansas, defensively, only allowing 3 yards a carry. So if they can hold up that run game and they can kind of have some run stoppage early, as we like to say, well, then you put the game back on the quarterback and you're able to have a little more attention in the secondary. Because we talked about the secondary having issues, but if you're able to have obvious passing downs, well, okay, we give ourselves a better chance to be successful in that situation. We're not having to be off balance and worry about, do our safeties need to fill? Do they need to play back? Like, our safeties can be a little bit more conservative and be a little bit more comfortable putting their heels right around 9-10 yards, expecting pass, and playing their assignment. You just have to worry about less things if you feel like your front seven is taking care of the run game. So when it comes down to the result in this game, our pick in this game, man, I think Max Johnson, again, I'm assuming he's going to be the guy. With Connor Wegman day-to-day, I'm assuming he's the guy for this prediction. If he's not, it is what it is. But I think whoever plays quarterback in this game for A&M plays well. I think that A&M is going to be able to score points against this Arkansas defense. I mean, we've seen that to this point, their last couple of games for Arkansas. I love KJ Jefferson. I'm concerned about the help he has with the playmakers. I love Andrew Armstrong, but I'm concerned about what they have on the outside to be able to separate consistently to allow them to keep pace with Arkansas, or allow them to keep pace with A&M. Last 2 games for Arkansas, the offense has scored 31. They're 0-2. Got to find a way to do something defensively. At the end of the day, I think A&M has too much firepower, and I think that Arkansas doesn't have enough answers, and I think that A&M wins this game. I think it's close. I think Arkansas covers, but I think the final score is Texas A&M 38, Arkansas 34. For Jimbo Fisher now, a little bit more of an exhale, too, for the people in College Station. Okay, good. Another test passed. Let's keep on rolling. You're not out of the woods yet, I don't think. But I do think you feel a lot more confident about the trajectory of this A&M football team, especially if there's no Connor Wegman. If you were to win a game without your starting quarterback, Max Johnson won this game for you a season ago, it would feel like, okay, we kind of are getting our footing now. Now let's go make some noise in the SEC. So that'll be a great one. Again, that's 12 Eastern on the SEC Network. And that'll be a good game to watch, man. I'm fired up for that.
Hey, JD.
Yes, sir.
So I can confirm that Connor Wegman will not only miss Saturday, but he's out for the rest of the year.
No.
Foot injury. We tweeted that on our main on 3 Twitter.
Jeez,
yeah,
man.
So he's done.
How about it?
Yeah.
How about it?
Max Johnson season, man.
Golly.
In fact, Max Johnson is trending 4 in the country right now on Twitter. So
No kidding. Okay, well, let's keep this clip then in our game predictions so we can make sure the good people know. Good thing we assume Max Johnson's playing quarterback for this game.
Yeah, I know. I'm glad the whole time I was like,
All
JD,
right.
You're right. You should assume that.
All right. Oh, hey, the Max Johnson era has, I guess, began in College Station.
It resumes.
And it resumes. That's a great way to say it. It resumes in College Station, and he will be your guy for you this coming Saturday against Arkansas.
Yep.
Here we go. Man, that is crazy to go from day to day to he's out for the year.
Yeah.
Golly.
It doesn't happen often.
Heartbreaking stuff for him. Hope he heals up and gets well soon. Absolutely crushing for Texas A&M, man. That is tough. There were such high expectations for him going into the year. Golly, you hate that for him. Absolutely hate that for him. All right. No easy way to transition from that. We hope he gets well soon and hope that Max Johnson does well in relief. We root for good things to happen to people on this show. Is that so counterintuitive? Is that so wrong that we want to see people be healthy and do good things on the football field? I don't think so. Also, we root for y'all to like the video and subscribe to the channel. We appreciate y'all in advance for that. All right, let's get right to it, man. The Deep South's oldest rivalry. You got Georgia going to Jordan-Hare. This is going to be an electric environment. 3:30 Eastern on CBS. Georgia favored by 14.5 points. The line's been a little bit tricky now. Hasn't always been 14.5. I believe it opened at somewhere around 16, favoring Georgia, gone down to 14.5. I don't know what Vegas knows. I don't pretend to know what Vegas knows. I do know that we're going to have our gambling picks for you on my Instagram, at Jody Pickell. Don't know that we'll include this one. Regardless, we'll give you our pick in this one as well as our pick against that number. But for Georgia, man, this is the kind of game where you handle business. Like, that's what they're feeling like internally. Like, you should have your undivided attention every single game on your opponent. But now in this spot, you had a slow start against UAB, had a slow start against South Carolina. Now you're on the road in a rivalry atmosphere. This is the game where you got to be dialed in. I expect and hope for, if you're a Georgia fan, a quick start from the Dogs. And for Carson Beck, this is the stress test for him. We'll talk more about that in a little bit, but this is his first real test on the road against an SEC opponent. I cannot wait to see how he responds, because there's been a lot of critics around what the offense hasn't done, even with how many points they've scored. There's been a little bit of criticism around him not pushing the ball downfield and the offense taking a while to get going, and Mike Bobo this, Mike Bobo that. This will be a really good gauge for us with what they do against Auburn. Speaking of the gauge, this is a great gauge for where Auburn's at. I mean, for Auburn, this is the biggest home game of Hugh Freeze's early career at Auburn. And this is a great measuring stick for us with Auburn, just from the eye test. I was talking to a good buddy of mine that's an Auburn fan this week, and I asked him how he feels about the game against Georgia. And we said, feel not great about what I saw against Texas A&M, but we kind of landed on the same fact that, hey, Hugh Freeze is there for a reason. If Auburn was reeling off SEC championships, Hugh Freeze probably doesn't get hired to be your head coach. He's there trying to do a repair job. That's why they went to the transfer portal and brought in the guys that they did. So what I'm trying to say is, for Auburn, obviously you want to win the football game. We're going to tell you who we think wins the football game here in just a second. But I think the key thing, if I'm an Auburn fan that I'm watching, is how do we look? How do we stack up? Hey, how far off are we if that's the gold standard in college football, as Hugh Freeze said? So we'll see if they're off at all. I mean, we'll see if Auburn's able to find a way to get this thing done. But I think the spread in this one is what it is for a reason. Like, Georgia is double-digit favorites because they have the matchups and because of the way they've looked so far and because of what they've done the last couple of seasons. Like, there's going to take a little bit of something extra for Auburn to be able to win this football game. So as we like to say on this one, on these shows rather, the non-negotiables for Auburn to have a chance in this football game are two things. One, we need easy execution scheme offensively. And that sounds counterintuitive because you think, hey, JD, this is the game now. Like, this is the empty the chamber kind of game for us if we're Auburn. We got two offensive masterminds in Hugh Freeze and Philip Montgomery. Like, let's scheme it up here. Let's get fancy with it. I hear that. I'm not saying you shouldn't do that, but I do think there needs to be something to fall back on if you're Auburn. Like that, like there needs to be some bread and butter before you go to the exotic trick play, dial it up, go deep kind of approach for Peyton Thorne. I need him to be comfortable in this game. And it may not be flashy, it may not be fun to watch, but like if all we have is quick game early, let's quick game Georgia to death. Let's give ourselves a chance on third down. Let's get to 3rd and 4, 3rd and 3. I don't know how I feel about them running the football against this operation for Georgia. I don't think that's probably the way you want to lean. I need easy execution offense for Peyton Thorne to get comfortable. Other thing, I need more possessions for Auburn. Sounds funny to say out loud, but I need more possessions for Auburn in this football game if they want to beat Georgia. Now, what does that look like? Could be turnovers. Hey, Carson Beck now, going to be a little bit loud in there. Can we make him rattled? Can we confuse him a little bit and force a turnover or two? Have to do it. Or do we steal one in special teams? Little fake punt action. Little onside kick, surprise onside. Start the first half, onside kick, boom, let's go. Got a possession now, got a little momentum. Need to touch the football more times than Georgia. There's no way around it for me. Has to happen. Going back to Carson Beck now, I'm very curious how he looks. I think the matchup is Carson Beck versus the attack mode approach of this Auburn defense. Because what we said about Auburn's offensive approach has to be easily executable, has to be in some way, shape, or form a little bit vanilla to watch. I don't think that's the case for the Auburn defense. For Auburn now, like, you're playing with house money. The spread is what it is for a reason. You got a first-year head coach. Like, you don't leave any bullets in the chamber defensively if you're Auburn. I want the most exotic blitzes. I want the safeties rocking and rolling because you have a unique spot here against a quarterback making his first big-time start on the road. Like, this is the one. I'm not saying this is his first road start. I'm saying this is his first big-time start on the road for Carson Beck. For Beck now, it's easy to get discombobulated by the environment and by what Auburn's going to try and do with Ron Roberts as the DC and how aggressive they're going to be and the blitzes. Like, for him, it's got to be a thing of just easing into the football game. And as you ease into the football game, do not make the big mistake. Do not throw the pick six that sets us back 7-0, and now we're in chase mode, and his confidence is going down, and we got issues. Can't be any of that. I don't think Georgia has any panic in them, but it has to be embodied by Carson Beck as he gets comfortable in this football game. May need to lean on the run game a little bit. It might be a thing where, hey, first drive, we're running it like 70% of the time. And that's how we're going to get down, and that's what we're going to do to kind of quiet the crowd down. And we're going to lean on that. We love our big boys up front. I think it's a matchup Georgia has. Like, I think that might be the way they have to get him comfortable into this football game. And then once those safeties kind of start rocking and rolling and get committed to the run game, then we dial it up, and then we start to try and stretch the field vertically if we're Carson Beck. But it cannot be a thing where you make that crucial mistake that sends the whole thing into a tailspin. For Carson Beck, he has to be in control of this football game. This will be a tremendous test for him, obviously physically, but I think psychologically is really what I'm watching for him. Under the hood, what does he do when things get a little bit intense? Because it will be intense in Jordan-Hare. No way around it. It will be intense. If he does get rattled, if he does throw a pick, if he does make that mistake, how does he respond? What's the response muscle for Carson Beck? We're going to learn a lot about him in this game, and I cannot wait to see it. The thing you fear if you're Georgia is that big mistake happens. Again, that's a big assumption that the big mistake happens if he makes that mistake. And then Georgia has issues where he's out of whack and they become one-dimensional. A lot of ifs, a lot of potentials, a lot of woulda, shoulda, coulda. So there's a lot of hypotheticals baked in here, but the spread is what it is for a reason. And this is Carson Beck against this attack mode defense of Auburn that I think is going to ultimately determine a lot of the outcome of this game early. Now, the thing for Auburn, in my opinion, there has to be something mobile about this quarterback, whether it's Peyton Thorne, whether it's Robbie Ashford, against this Georgia defense. Because the Georgia defense, I think, just has every edge, quite frankly. I mean, you would hope someone can separate on the outside for you at the wide receiver position if you're Auburn. But I think for Georgia, It's not a thing where you can just walk out there and say, we like this matchup, let's go attack it. I don't think that exists. And so what you got to do is have a game plan breaker. Got to have Peyton Thorne have some wiggle. Got to have Robbie Ashford have some wiggle. I would not be surprised, and this is not to knock Peyton Thorne, this is just kind of the way the game I think could go. Would not be surprised if we see Robbie Ashford get handed the keys to this offense at some point during this football game. I don't wish that upon Peyton Thorne. I'm just curious because I saw the game against A&M and I felt like when Robbie Ashford was in the game, maybe it was a change of pace thing, maybe it was A&M wasn't prepared for it thing, but it felt like the offense had a touch more direction with him running the football and with him operating that offense. We'll see if that holds true in this game, but you need to find some kind of edge. You need to have something that doesn't fit in the playbook for Georgia that you can take advantage of if you're Auburn. And make no mistake about it, your quarterback on a broken play does not fit in the playbook. You can try and prepare for it. You can try and scheme up different solutions to it, but it's not a thing where you just expect your players to be ready for that. It's a very reactionary kind of scenario. So for Robbie Ashford, creating that could be a thing that takes advantage of this Georgia defense and could generate some offense. Now, the differentiator for me in this game and the disadvantage that I see for Auburn is that line of scrimmage. Like the big boys up front for Georgia, you watch them on tape, you watch Auburn on tape, and the push is just noticeable from Georgia on both the offensive and defensive side of the ball. And the thing for me is that may not be the differentiator in the first half, but in the third and fourth quarter, even if Carson Beck isn't putting together the best stat line, let's say he's like 17 for 31, touchdown a pick, like you can still go back to your offensive line and just say, hey, we're going to pound the rock. That's how we're getting out of here today. That's how we're going to go ahead and win this football game. I think we see Auburn scheme it up to the max defensively. I do think they throw the kitchen sink at Carson Beck. I think they get some kind of rhythm at some point in this game offensively that Georgia has to kind of put an end to. I think we see a little bit of a run here from Auburn at some point. Even so, though, I think the difference maker on top of the line of scrimmage for Georgia could be what they have from a playmaker standpoint. Brock Bowers going to get a lot of attention. This is the game, I think, where we see Dominique Lovett really do some damage. And so I think Georgia wins this football game. I think the final score is 31-17 Dogs. And I think what we see in this game, that the big takeaway for me, if Georgia finishes this game with that score or plays the way that I expect them to play, we kind of see this Georgia football team really start to take shape in 2023. We see them really kind of become who we have expected them to be. I don't know if it's a final product, but we see them look more and more like they're going to have to look when it comes to games in November to beat the Ole Misses and to beat the Tennessees. So for Auburn, we talked about it at the top. It's house money. You're going to learn a lot about your team. You learn about how you stack up, but you don't overreact if you don't win the game against Georgia. And we already know that, but just want to make sure we got that out there in this prediction. Be a lot of fun, though. Can't wait. Deep South's oldest rivalry about to go down this Saturday. Jordan Hare, man, is going to be absolutely wild. Like, the game atmosphere itself at Kick. If there's a game you're showing up for, if you're an Auburn fan, that's the one. That's the one that you were dialed in for. I understand the Iron Bowl is a big deal. I get that. But I'm saying, like, this game right now to this point in the year, what it could mean for the trajectory. Think about if Auburn wins that game, what it would do for their recruiting. Would be absolutely massive. Absolutely massive. Appreciate everybody tuned in right now. If you could like the video and subscribe to the channel, would appreciate that enormously. We are a little bit under our goal of 100 likes per show. So if you could like the video, we will have, everybody who's tuned in right now likes the video, will be well over that goal of 100. So thank you in advance for that. And we're going to keep on rolling here. Let's talk about another game here. Biggest game of the week, actually. And we did not anticipate it being the biggest game of the week when we first looked at the schedule and saw how things could maybe shake out. Notre Dame goes to Durham, North Carolina to play Duke. Y'all, Duke is undefeated. Duke is ranked. Notre Dame's the one with the loss, actually. Now, Notre Dame, to be fair, they just played Ohio State, and they took them down to the wire. Notre Dame's still favored by 5.5 points. This is 7:30 Eastern on ABC. Notre Dame is now in playoff mode. They're in playoff mode. You hate the way that game ended against Ohio State. Had 10 men on the field. It hurts. Felt like you played well enough to win, but even so, another loss for Notre Dame would disqualify them from the college football playoff race. This is a game that you probably didn't expect to have the kind of hype that it does right now. Didn't expect to have College game day in back-to-back weeks, but you do if you're Notre Dame. Now this one's in Durham, North Carolina. But even so, how do you bounce back? Because that one, I promise you, is just a heartbreaker. It's gut-wrenching. It knocks you down, takes the air out of you a little bit if you're Notre Dame. How do you respond? Because it's not a spot now where you get to kind of just roll out there and eventually put it together in the second half. Like, this is going to be a thing where Duke is going to press you from the jump. They're going to be physical. They're going to play a brand of football that could give you issues. And they have nothing to lose, man. Like, I say they have nothing to lose in the sense that, again, nobody is probably going to pick Duke to win this football game. We'll see what happens when College Game Day picks this one, but like, there's not going to be an overwhelming majority saying, yep, give me Duke over Notre Dame. Right? I mean, Duke is playing with house money in that sense, but also it's not an ACC game for them. Right? Like, this is not a game that's going to impact their ultimate goal of playing for an ACC title. So for them, it's like, cool, we got College Game Day in town. You would imagine there's a pretty solid crowd that turns out in this game. Night game. You got a quarterback that's in NFL draft talks right now, like a top 5 guy in terms of quarterbacks that have come off the board. This is house money for Duke. Duke's saying, all right, let's ride, baby. And I cannot wait to watch this one. Matchup for me is Notre Dame's offensive physicality against what Mike Elko and Tyler Santucci scheme up. Tyler Santucci, the defensive coordinator for Notre Dame. Mike Elko, pretty well documented, a defensive guy. For Duke to win this football game, they need to push the responsibility on the Notre Dame pass catchers. Like, they have shown that they can do it in spurts, but I think they want to make sure that it's a thing where, hey, if we lose this football game, it's not because you just ran the football on us at will, because that's what Notre Dame wants to do now. Make no mistake about it. They are a 57% run team. Like, that's the balance, I suppose, in play calling for them. 57% of the time, 57% of the time they are running the football. And Audric Estime is a big reason why you run the football 57% of the time, along with that offensive line. Duke needs to get stops in the run game. There's nothing novel about that. There's nothing super analytical about that. They need to find a way to get a better push up front. Because what I've seen so far from Duke, and the reason why I factor in Mike Elko and Tyler Santucci into this matchup, Duke has not looked phenomenal against the run. They've allowed 200 yards rushing or right around that against Clemson. Still find a way to win that football game. The key for Notre Dame against Duke is to live in 3rd and short. Duke wants to force like 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8. If you can live in 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8, mission accomplished. We'll live with the result. Now, Sam Hartman probably still has a thing or two to say about that, and we'll talk about that here in a second. But this whole matchup comes down to negative plays on 1st and 2nd down for this Duke defense. You can get a tackle for a loss on 2nd down, good things are going to happen for your defense. Or at the very least, you're better prepared for your defense to be set up against that Notre Dame pass, and you force Jaden Greathouse to get open. You force Tobias Merriweather to get open. You say, okay, beat us on the back end. If you can beat us on the back end, we think we've done our job. And that's how they want to live. Now, the other matchup I'm watching is Riley Leonard against the team speed of this Notre Dame defense. The way this Duke offense works, man, they put a lot on Riley Leonard's plate. Like, they do a lot of quick game with him. They do a lot of RPO game with him. And a lot of what it comes down to for Duke offensively, they ask Riley Leonard to make good decisions and quick decisions consistently. Now, Riley Leonard has not seen a defense like Duke to this point. Riley Leonard has not seen a defense like Notre Dame to this point, rather. Notre Dame is allowing 49% completion percentage on the year. That's top 5 in the country. And they played against Kyle McCord last week, played against Brennan Armstrong. Like, they've seen some quarterbacks with some ability. And I think for Notre Dame, those windows that Riley Leonard was throwing into earlier, they're going to close a little bit quicker. Those decisions that you were making before, you have a little bit less of a shot clock now to make those decisions. And so if Riley Leonard is on the money with these decisions, then the Duke offense is built to have answers. Like, it's built to have options to throw to regardless of what the defense does, or have a run play built in there, obviously, with the RPO scheme. They're going to score points if Riley Leonard makes good decisions. Now, he's got to make them on time. He can't make the good decision too late, because that just ultimately ends up being a bad decision. We'll talk about that. But I think they'll score points if he's on his P's and Q's. That's just the way this offense is built. Keep an eye on Jalen Calhoun in this game for Duke. Probably their best wide receiver they have on that roster. If they're going to win the football game, he has to be a factor in the pass game. Okay, now, if Riley Leonard is a little bit slow to make his right decision, a little bit off the game a little bit in terms of seeing the defense, and it's a little bit quick for him, and he's making the right decision too late, well, then that's going to lead to turnovers. All right? It's going to lead to turnovers. At best for Duke, it would lead to like a, hey, let's figure it out kind of conversation on the sideline. And if that happens, man, you have empty possessions against Notre Dame. One, you may not see the football for a while based on how Notre Dame, I expect, they will run the football with Audric Estime and how they get down offensively. Also, you may have to start playing catch-up with how I think they're going to score against Duke because of what they have on that line of scrimmage. So that's going to be very crucial. The team speed of Notre Dame and the decisions and the timeliness of the decisions for Riley Leonard based on what they have in this offense. Now, the differentiator to me in this game is Sam Hartman. Like a year ago for Notre Dame in this game, regardless of who you had playing quarterback, you probably, if you're Duke, could have just sold out for the run game and said, quarterback, you got to beat us. I don't think Duke can live that way against Notre Dame in this football game. I think the major key for Sam Hartman now is he can't get greedy and turn it over. Because there's going to be plays to be made, especially off play action when they get that run game going a little bit with Audric Estime. There's going to be plays to be made, but you got to put it on the money, got to be on time. And if you're late and you do make that error, Duke will turn you over. They are really good in terms of turning you over. They have 2 takeaways a game right now. It's top 20 in the country is the Duke defense. Now, Sam Hartman, knock on wood if you're a Notre Dame fan. I won't knock on the table right now because you all have told me you don't like it when we do that during this podcast. But he has not thrown an interception yet. So he's been flawless. Duke has forced a lot of turnovers. If Sam Hartman is able to be the version of Sam Hartman you've seen to this point in the year, if you're a Notre Dame fan, they're going to win this football game. And you're going to be able to be really balanced and take advantage of both the run game and the pass game against this Duke defense. So what it comes down to for me, I think Notre Dame's line of scrimmage is just going to be too powerful for Duke. Like, they've got Joe Alt, who's going to make a ton of money in the NFL here pretty soon. They've got Audric Estime, who's first team all downhill. Like, they're going to pound the rock against Duke. I wholeheartedly believe that. And I think Duke is going to give them a little bit of trouble early. I think they're going to swing hard, especially in that first half. I think they will have something dialed up for them offensively. I think Riley Leonard will give them all they can handle in that first half. But in the second half, man, I think Duke is going to be overmatched from a depth standpoint against that Notre Dame run game. And I think that the pass game eventually does open up for Sam Hartman. Explosive plays happen. So I think Notre Dame wins this game. I think Notre Dame covers. Final score 27-17 for the Fighting Irish. And think about this now for Notre Dame. If you win this football game on the road against a ranked opponent and you're fighting and scratching and clawing for your college football playoff life, you didn't expect this to be the matchup it was going to be or have the hype that it has right now. But if you win this football game, nice little notch in the resume belt. So Notre Dame, I think, wins this football game, but this will be a phenomenal matchup. And I think it all comes down to physicality for the Fighting Irish to eventually get it done on the road in Durham, North Carolina. Man, I'm just fired up that's even a good game. Like, the slate this week for week 5 doesn't have the shine that maybe a Florida State Clemson had, a Notre Dame Ohio State had, but even so, man, there's some really good football games. By nature of us having 3 predictions to make on this very show on a Wednesday. It's usually Prediction Tuesday. Usually we stack Prediction Tuesday for you, but we could not fit it all into the Tuesday show, so we had to go to Wednesday. We appreciate y'all being dialed in. Appreciate y'all liking the video. Appreciate y'all being subscribed to this channel. Right now, I want to hear from y'all in the live chat. So get in there right now. If you have a question, you have a take, you have a concern, whatever it is, get in the live chat right now, and we will bring on Nick Brake here in just a second to answer those for you. Before we do that, though, got to tell you about Bird Dogs. Bird Dogs bringing you the hard count today. And Bird Dogs, I will tell you this, they are first team all tailgate. They won't say it, so I will. They are first team all tailgate. What that means is at a tailgate, there's a couple of different ways that plays out for you. Usually you start somewhere in the morning, maybe you break out the grill, maybe you got some beverages, maybe you stayed in an RV the night before at the tailgate. Like, I don't know how hardcore you want to be, but at the end of the day now, you are staying in the same pair of clothes, same pair of shorts, same polo, whatever it is, the entirety of the day. So you can't be out there looking like a schmuck, right? You got to look good is the first thing, because it's a tailgate, for goodness sakes. You got to bring your best, look good, feel good, play good, root good, kind of the way this thing goes. But you also got to be comfortable, because you're tailgating probably for, I would imagine if you're serious, upwards of 6 hours. If you're a real-life tailgater, you're probably going for a while there. You got to make sure that you're comfortable. You can't wear this non-stretchy fabric. You can't wear something that's going to be too hot in, not breathable, like Bird Dogs. Whether it's shorts you want to wear, and if it's still shorts weather where you are, we salute y'all. And if you want to wear something with pants like most of us, and you want to wear something that's going to keep you a little bit more comfortable and insulated, got some great options for you in the pants department as well. So redeem code JD at checkout at birddogs.com. Get you something else for your tailgate, a little hydro flask style water bottle. All right, so you can put whatever you want in there, keep your beverages cold all game day, and you just redeem code JD at checkout with your khakis or your shorts, whatever you get. They'll take care of you with that hydro flask style of water bottle. So we appreciate Bird Dogs bringing y'all the hard count again. First team all tailgate. You will not want to take your Bird Dogs off. Promise. So we appreciate Bird Dogs making it happen here. Appreciate y'all making it happen here. Again, I say all the time, the most important part of this show is y'all. We love getting to talk about ball right here, but we're just talking into a microphone and a camera with nobody watching if y'all don't make this happen. So we appreciate y'all being part of the program. And if you just found us, welcome. It's college football, and only college football every single day of the year. And we celebrate fall Saturdays as they deserve to be celebrated, with energy, with passion, and with juice. So thank y'all for being a part of that. All right, now let's break it down with what y'all had to say, man. I want to welcome in Nick Brake, keeper of the Q, producer extraordinaire, heavy lifter, pride of Owensboro, Kentucky. Hey, Nick, big one tonight. Big one tonight for the boys, for BKE, if you will.
I've got a kickball game tonight.
Yep. How we feeling?
Feeling pretty good. You know, I was walking my dog, Xochi, this morning. She's a little Yorkie Chihuahua. I was walking in the park across the street from my apartment, and I kind of tweaked my calf. And that doesn't happen anyway. And I was like, oh, no, here we go. I got a big game tonight, playing against a former teammate. It was rough.
Rivalry.
It is.
Rivalry kind of feel to it.
I can't quite say the team that we're playing. It's a little crude.
Yeah.
But, yeah, it's going to be a big one tonight.
Are you still a start in fantasy? Like I have you on my, I had you in my flex, but I'm not sure if with that information around your calf, do I still play?
Oh yeah. Shout out to our one of our sponsors, Prize Picks. I feel like you could probably hit the more tonight. I'm feeling good, even with the calf.
Okay,
whatever my over under is, take it. Or I almost called you. Okay, take it, JD.
All right, I love it. I love it, baby. Bring it on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Bring it on. What are the good people saying in the chat, Nick?
Well,
good crowd it looks like.
Mark the Point says, JD, do you think Vandergriff is a starter before the end of the season? That's a very low probability, JD, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, that's a bold claim. So we're going to go ahead and just eliminate injury out of that equation. Like, obviously, if Carson Beck were to go down, and we hope that doesn't happen, Brock Vandergriff's your guy, more than likely. I think Carson Beck's getting some unnecessary shade. I mean, they haven't really opened it up just yet. You played against South Carolina, and maybe that was the most reliable sample size you have. I think this game against Auburn is going to tell us a lot. But to this point, man, I have not seen anything from Carson Beck that makes me think he's not the right guy for the job. And keep in mind, too, the consistency that he had during fall camp and his spring game and all that. Like, there's a lot of factors that I think need to be taken into account behind closed doors. And I guess that spring game we all got to see. Carson Beck has been in this system, even with Mike Bobo being the new OC. He's been in the system at Georgia for a long time. And so I think the trust factor with him has to be there. Now, he has to still earn it. And I promise you, if he were not the right guy for the job, even if they win the football game, they will go to Brock Vandagriff. But I think Carson Beck will go wire to wire. And I think we're going to see his play continue to trend upward week in and week out with the Georgia offense, I think, continue to get more comfortable under Mike Bobo and maybe even open up a little bit more. They haven't really had to rev the engine too much just yet, but we'll see if that's the case this weekend in Auburn, Alabama.
JD, we've got a question from Gavin. It says, JD, are Florida State frauds? And then Double Boy was like, no, JD has him number 2 in the rankings, so he's not going to say yes to that.
Yeah, I'm if they are frauds, then we're fooled. I do not think Florida State's a fraud. That's not to say Florida State can't still lose a game somewhere. Like, being a fraud and then losing a game, two different things. You can be a really good football team, and I think seeing is believing. Like, I've seen them beat LSU. I've seen them beat Clemson. We saw that one up close and personal. Like, that's a really good football team. The way they're built, I don't think has a lot of weaknesses. They played a really good front seven against Clemson and were held to 22 yards and still found a way to win the football game. I love what they have on paper. I love their response muscle with what they're able to do when it's not their best day. I like Florida State right now a whole lot. I have them number 2 in the country. And we're going to see what they do in those games in the back half of the slate against Florida, against Miami. But right now, man, I think Florida State, it's hard for me to call them anything but one of the best in the country.
JD, I feel like this is another question that I sort of know the answer to. Sean asked JD, who's more of a threat to hand Georgia their first loss of the year? Auburn this week or Kentucky, who have flown under the radar?
Yeah. I guess if you were to make a case for Auburn, it would be, hey, home spot. They're going to give them all they can handle. Kentucky's on the road. Like I say, Kentucky is on the road themselves. It's in Athens. I really think that it's got to be Kentucky. I mean, I think just what they have from a personnel standpoint is going to be substantially better than what Auburn has. I get the environment's going to be crazy. I get it's a rivalry atmosphere. But at the end of the day, I think Devin Leary is more capable than a Peyton Thorne or a Robbie Ashford. And I think that team just has more identity than where Hugh Freeze is right now in year one. Not saying Auburn won't still give Georgia a little bit of a run here in the early going. I think you will see a drive or two where it's like, hey, Auburn's kind of cooking here. Hey, Peyton Thorne kind of looks good. Hey, Robbie Ashford kind of looks good, whoever's playing quarterback for them at that point in the game. But at the end of the day, man, I do think Kentucky just gives a better test as a whole.
Okay. Hey, Burley says Georgia will feel the sting of a loss this year. I don't know who it would come to.
I guess Ole Miss could be tricky. We'll see where they are then. SEC title game, we'll see. But in the regular season, man, we break down every single week individually. But, yeah, I mean, Georgia, they are not – I want to make sure I say this clearly. Georgia could lose a football game. Mm-hmm. Right now, they're the best team in the country. How's that, Nick? I think that's probably the best way to say it.
It's a pretty safe way to say it, and I think a very accurate way to say it as well. So, well done. JD, a couple more questions, comments. Rocky Top Tom. I feel like I say old Tom's name about every day, and I love it. Keep coming, Rocky Top Tom. JD, wasn't it just awesome to see some old school, run the ball, historic game football with Notre Dame and Ohio State last Saturday?
Hey, it was great. And what was it, 10.5 million viewers?
Oh yeah,
is that what it was? I know that's your program over there with NBC, Nick.
I just think NBC Sports has got a good broadcast, and I think their college football is going to be really good there.
It was great. Mm-hmm. It was great, man. Yeah, it was nice to see. I mean, if you're an Ohio State fan, you're like, hey, let's open it up a little bit here. Let's connect a little bit more with Emeka Egbuka. But even so, like I thought it was a great game. I loved it. And I loved the style of play. And if you like points, maybe you didn't love it, but I think if you're a college football purist and you just love seeing two great teams, two great brands get after it in a historic venue in South Bend, like I thought it was awesome. And I was glad that a lot of the country got to see it. I think that's good for the sport.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it is good because, you hear college football and you expect that the shootout, and I think it's good to show, hey, look, there's some great defenses in college football too.
I 100% agree, Nick. I think that's a great point. A lot of variety.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, man, it's what always happens. Right when I'm about to ask the last question, a lot of questions pour in, but we're going to get to this one. Eric, JD, do you think Caleb Williams and USC can have a huge day on Saturday, and can it finally be their catalyst to a run in the college football playoffs?
The answer is I think they will win. I think it will be convincing. I think it will be resounding. I think the defense will make some plays that kind of make you feel a little bit better about that side of the ball. Talked to somebody from USC actually yesterday that talked about how difficult that Arizona State game was from the way the Arizona State game plan for USC. So we'll see with the matchups that Colorado presents for USC on the perimeter, especially Xavier Weaver, not Xavier Worthy, Xavier Weaver and Jimmy Horn Jr. are both going to be guys that you got to account for. Shedeur Sanders, we know what he is at the quarterback position. Like it's going to take a real effort from USC defensively. Like it's not going to be one of those things where they just roll the ball out there and they got better personnel. Like Colorado can hurt you offensively if you don't take care of business. So I think they win. I think it's resounding. I don't know that it's like the catalyst for them to get to the college football playoff. I think you probably circled the games against Washington and against Oregon a little bit more. The game against Utah for sure. Like those games probably make me feel better about USC, but like the spread is what it is for a reason. It's 21.5, I believe, favoring USC. They should handle business, and we'll learn a lot about the defense this week. I'll just say that.
Okay, JD, really quick from Noah, what's the game of the year so far?
Man, game of the year so far. There's a lot of good candidates. I mean, how crazy. We're 4 weeks through, and we have quite a few games that you could point to and say, hey, is that the game of the year? Like, it sounds kind of wild, but like Colorado TCU, dude, that was awesome. Ohio State Notre Dame down to the last play. The game we were at, Florida State Clemson, I think all those games deserve some sort of consideration. I'll be a little bit biased and probably lean right now towards Florida State Clemson because of what that meant for Florida State and the fact that it went to overtime. Sleeper pick here, Akron, Indiana. That went to 4 overtimes. 4 OTs, baby. And everyone was talking about, oh, the slate's so good, but Akron, Indiana's this and that. Like, that was a great game. So a lot of games to pick from. We'll lean Florida State Clemson, but anticipate there'll be a lot of other good ones the rest of the way. Is that it for the chat, Big Nick?
That's it for now, man.
Amazing.
We'll see you tomorrow.
Amazing. Back on the air tomorrow. Nick, I appreciate you, brother. Back on the air tomorrow. Making a pick for Texas, Kansas. Kansas going to Austin. It wasn't all that long ago when Kansas went into Austin, threw up the horns down, and won that football game. Texas obviously done a little bit of work on themselves, looked in the mirror a little bit, and kind of revitalized that operation since that game. But if Texas doesn't take it seriously now, they want to look ahead to Red River, Jalen Daniels and company, they could give them some issues. So we'll break that one down and give you a pick tomorrow in that game. So make sure you're tuned in tomorrow, 11 a.m. Eastern. We'll give you our prediction, talk about who could be on upset alert, as well as a number of other things. We appreciate y'all being tuned in, man. Hey, quick shout out to the boys in upstate New York. Cornell, big win, upset win in the Yale Bowl. Last second field goal to take down the Bulldogs. I'll just say, if there was a team they had to beat, that was a game I was glad they won. I'll leave it at that. But shout out to Jamison Wang. Shout out to Coach David Archer and the boys getting a big-time win, staying undefeated. Homecoming this week against Colgate. Shout out to the blue-collar Ivy at Cornell. Appreciate y'all, man. Appreciate y'all being tuned in. Live on the air tomorrow, 11 a.m. Eastern. Want to see y'all there. Tell a friend. Bring them in here. Make sure they're subscribed. Make sure you've already liked the video. Over 100 likes yet again. Appreciate y'all for that. I'm JD Piquel. We appreciate y'all. We love y'all. We're going to keep this party rolling. We will see y'all next time.